When my hands started trembling on that fluorescent-lit stage, I was already drowning. The slab of nervous sweat down my back clung to the white chef's jacket like a stain. Around me, the city's culinary elite, those stiff-backed, narrow-dyed expert jurors, waited with metal pens poised over score sheets, expressions glazed as granite, hungry for a mistake. I held my pastry bag higher, tried to steady my breathing, but the more I concentrated, the further my mind slipped from me. I could hear a snicker from the left. One of the other candidates, a judge, didn't matter. Every muscle in my arm locked. The meringue drooped. My piped roses wilted into uneven blots. The kitchen lights seemed to focus on my failure, magnifying it. The walls of the auditorium echoed every awkward clink and scrape with the force of a shout. There was a murmur in the crowd, spectators mostly from the academy, a few from local cafes, too many familiar voices. I could have walked off then and there, but I kept at it, sweating my heart out, the minutes punctuated by the judges tapping pens. My cream curdled, the lemon tart base was underbaked, dough too soft. By the end, when I bowed out, I saw one of the judges, the balding one with the sharp nose, make a note. Now Sabe nada, knows nothing. Behind the partition in the smoking corridor that still reeked of last night's janitorial cleanser, my mother stood awkwardly cradling her borrowed handbag. She'd worn her good dress, a geometric mess of primary colors that bled into each other. Her lips pursed tight. My older brother Felipe circled me like a shark already scenting blood. I could smell the burnt sugar from the second row, he announced. That wouldn't pass at any bakery, they'd throw it out. Why do you bother, Luce? In my head, I replied a dozen ways, cutting, clever, devastating. In reality, I only felt the heat rise in my chest, pooling behind my eyes. I kept my mouth shut. If I argued, they'd accuse me of childishness again. We've talked about this, my mother started, her voice trying for gentle but ringing with that note of disappointment you can't unhear. You've always liked cakes, but turning it into a job, maybe find something stable. Pastry chef, chef pâtissier, Felipe drawled the title with sarcasm. What's next? You tell everyone you want to be a movie star. They laughed a little too easily. Mother shifted her handbag, as if weighing the pros and cons of disowning me on the spot. It felt like the entire city of Curitiba was in on the joke, small boy with clumsy hands, laughable ambitions. I'd grown up in this city's mild evenings and abrupt rains, its flaking colonial houses and its shrieking bus lines. But the kitchens I dreamed of, gleaming, alive with butter and chocolate, felt as unreachable as the moon. That night the ridicule stuck to my lungs like flour dust, choking every breath. I didn't go home with them. I didn't even answer when my mother called for days after. I wandered the old city centre for hours, listening to the choir of complaints that echoed in my head. Why waste your life on cakes? I landed a gig washing dishes at a small lanchonete, hiding in the back most days, scrubbing plates and keeping to myself while the pastry counter taunted me. Whenever the chef left for his afternoon smokes, I'd slide a spare bit of dough from the bin and try shaping it, anything to keep my hands in the game. But Curitiba has a way of grinding dreams into dust. My aunts gossiped about me at every family feijoada. He's still at that canteen, you know, still playing with flour, such a waste for a smart boy. I stopped picking up at my uncle's bar. Felipe made sure every friend, neighbor, and distant cousin knew. Louis failed the exam, couldn't even make a decent cake. Anger kept me afloat. I refused to collapse in front of them, refused to confirm every sneered word. Pretty soon, my anger became a sediment, hardening underneath every moment of humiliation, fuel. That's why, during a lull before closing one night, I knocked on the chef's cramped office door. I know I'm just the dishwasher, I blurted, but if you ever need someone to do prep work, I can handle it. He eyed me, short, skeptical, more grey hair than black, but not unkind. Let me see your hands, he said. I showed him the scars, the calluses. You're not afraid of bread, he asked. No. So I started prepping, kneading dough, rolling pastel crusts, transforming scratch ingredients into something resembling the pastry I'd dreamed of. It was nothing glamorous. My eclairs collapsed. My first marzipan looked like pale snakes. But the chef noticed I stayed late, studied old cookbooks, worked in silence when he criticized. There was a pleasure in sweating for something and seeing, if only in stolen shards, the dessert's slow transformation, chaos into precision. Word got around that I was wasting time at that lanchonete. But over the seasons, when summer melted into the wet, grey, flourless winter, I rose. Prep guy, then assistant, still mocked at home, ignored by neighbors. No one visited the lanchonete except to smirk at the failed chef, but I knew what I'd seen in that competition room. How the best pastries, firm, fragrant, gleaming, had commanded the attention of every judge. I wanted that artistry, that command. I wanted to be so good that derision would stick in every doubting throat. One night the chef pulled me aside. You want to do this for real? You need school, go to Paris, or Sao Paulo at least, this city's not enough for you. I barely had money to buy a proper chef's knife, let alone study abroad, but the idea burned like a fever. I sold my old bike, took up a morning gig baking cheese bread in bulk for a hotel, spent nights scouring the internet for scholarships, grants, courses, anything. The next time my family saw me, I barely recognized myself. Hollow-cheeked, eyes rimmed with stress, clothes 2 years old, but the acceptance letter from the patisserie school in Paris glowed in my hand like treasure. You'll be back broke in a month, Felipe warned. Stay here, my mother muttered softly. Jobs are tight, you're lucky you even have the lanchonettes. But I left. The night before I flew, I walked the crooked streets near the Estação, took in the late dogs barking and the hush of the plane trees. Anger simmered inside me, but something else, too, fragile, tender hope cracked open like an egg. The plane left in the pre-dawn chill, dragging my old life behind it. Paris was grueling. My classmates cut me with their eyes, unimpressed by a nobody from Brazil. My accent tripped me up, my technique wobbled. But the difference was I no longer feared humiliation. I'd already burned in that fire. At night I worked in hotel kitchens, washing floors for scraps. By dawn I practiced the art, puff pastry, caramel, spun sugar, chocolate that snapped like glass. Some days I failed badly, ruined dough, burnt tart tatin. Other days I improved enough to taste the possibilities. I watched the masters, I mirrored everything I saw. My sense of time, of control, grew sharper. Serenity crept in where rage once lived. When I returned to my shoebox apartment with aching arms, I slept almost smiling. Years passed slowly and then all at once. I graduated near the top, then apprenticed at a patisserie in Montmartre. My hands, those trembling, prematurely old hands, could now pipe cream with surgical confidence. I mailed a single letter home, I'm working, I'm fine, I'll write when I can. I didn't mention awards or competitions. I didn't explain how my French was finally good enough that I could overhear the chef cursing me for being too precise and feel proud. Slowly, as my confidence rooted itself, I let the anger go. Each perfectly lacquered tart, each sugared violet, eroded the memory of Felipe's laughter, my mother's disapproval. Sometimes I'd walk across a bridge by the Seine at sunrise and just for an instant feel utterly, beautifully serene. The invitation arrived almost by accident, filtered through old email folders, the Curitiba Culinary Festival, searching for alumni from its distinguished sons and daughters. They wanted local flavor with international experience. I accepted, more than the recognition I wanted to see. No, I needed to see the faces of those who'd written me off. I wanted the proof to be irrefutable, not for them, not even for me, but against the slow, grinding doubt that had shaped my life. That return was nothing like the movies. The city had changed, accents sharper, buses newer, even the downtown board beneath giant advertisements. My family's apartment still stunk faintly of boiled beans and garlic, plastic slipcovers on the ancient couch doing little to mask the scent. My mother was thinner, hair silvering, hands crooked. Felipe was paunchier, sporting half a beard, eyes darting wherever I went. He's back, he called, more surprised than glad. The festival chose the old Teatro Guarira, a grand, echo-filled theatre with golden lights and flocked seats. I arrived early, case in hand, jacket pressed. Inside, the organizers ran around, fretting about humidity and the fresh deliveries of fruit. I set up at a long marble counter with 4 other chefs, none from Curitiba. My display, a series of petits gâteaux, immaculate French entremet balanced with Brazilian flavors, tonka bean, cupuaçu, orange from the Serra. The centerpiece was my invention, a barrel-shaped lacquered chocolate mousse, Valrhona and Paraná orange draped with spun sugar topped with crisp shards of caramel. I worked calmly, every movement precise. My anger was a fossil now. I had nothing to prove, my hands sure as anchors. The crowd gathered, curious at first, then more agitated as recognizable faces arrived, including several old judges from that catastrophic day, their hair thinner, their eyes no less judgmental. I recognized the balding one, he recognized me. My mother hovered on the floor, uncertain whether to smile or scold. Felipe trailed her, arms crossed. The judges circled, murmuring posh greetings to the others. Then the balding judge stopped at my station, his eyes falling on my badge, Louis Alvear's chef pâtissier Paris. He picked up a gold-plated fork, tapped it on the plate. Nobody in the room seemed to breathe. A mousse, he asked quietly. It's a citrus chocolate mousse, orange from the Serra, I answered in even Portuguese. There's a praline layer. That's risky, he muttered, forking a piece. All the old humiliation pressed in for a heartbeat, my first worst memory sliced open. But this time I saw it, the way his eyes widened as he tasted, the way his hand paused midair, savoring. He lifted a caramel shard with weathered fingers, examining it against the theatre's gold lights. He turned, called the other judges. One by one, they finished my dessert, murmuring to one another, sometimes nodding, once even smiling. Then the judge faced me softer now. This is, he struggled, searching for a word. His pen hovered. Finally, he wrote something down and closed the booklet. My family offstage were frozen in place. Felipe's smirk faltered. My mother pressed her hand to her mouth. Someone in the crowd whispered, "Il est cute daqui." When the judging ended, I won. Not just an applause or a polite handshake, but the festival's top honor, Critics' Choice, a standing ovation, articles in every Curitiba newspaper. They brought me up on stage under the bright chandelier, and in the second row, my family and half the city's so-called experts watched as old judges stood and shook my hand. They called me Chef Louise, the word echoing around me, a title that no longer felt like a joke, the proof irrefutable, solid as sugar glass. Afterwards, they all crowded around, hungry now for pictures, questions, advice. But I spotted my mother near the back, half hidden by velvet curtains. When our eyes met, she tried to smile, tears trembling in her lined cheeks. She reached up, brushed my arm. "I didn't understand," she whispered. "Not until now." I could have let the anger answer for me. Instead, I hugged her, fingers gentle on her thin shoulders, and felt something inside me quiet at last. Felipe hovered awkwardly at my side, mustering a sheepish grin. "You were stubborn," he mumbled. "Turns out you were right." He tried to laugh, but it faded. I could see the years he'd spent jeering, the certainty that he'd been right, cracking now, replaced by something softer, maybe even regret. I didn't say "I told you so." I didn't need to. Instead, I looked out at the crowd, the tapestry of faces, some still skeptical, most now awestruck. The city that had mocked me was now clamoring for autographs, for advice, for a seat at my table. That night, as the cheers faded and rain started to drum on the stone streets of my old city, I walked home past the lanchonette where I'd once scrubbed dishes. The window was fogged, but I could see a young guy at the counter, two flour-smudged hands kneading dough on a too small table. I paused, watching him work, feeling that slow, blooming serenity in my chest. Anger finally evaporated, leaving something fierce and peaceful behind. I made it, against their doubts, against my own. But in the end, I brought it back here to Curitiba. I wasn't running anymore. I stood beneath the dripping eaves and felt the city around me familiar and changed, and I knew I belonged, finally, at home.